Your Bibles here this evening to the book of Mark chapter 3. Mark chapter 3, we'll be reading from there this evening. A family had a newborn baby, and so they went to church the following Sunday, and they were going to dedicate the newborn. After the dedication of the newborn, the little brother sat in the back of the car, and he cried all the way home, and he continued to bawl and cry and weep. His father, curious to why he was crying, he kept asking him and he wouldn't answer. And finally, the dad said, "Son, why are you crying?" And the boy finally answered, said, "When the pastor was praying over us, he kept saying he wanted us brought up in a Christian home." He said, "But Dad, I don't want to leave you. I want to stay with you and Mom." See, that tells us that family has the ability to influence your life. See, family can be a blessing, but sometimes, if you don't know this already, they work behind their own agenda regarding your life. And so in the scripture that we're going to be reading from here tonight, Jesus, he speaks about what defines a family. And so I want to preach a sermon I've entitled Family Influence out of Mark chapter 3, starting in verse 31. If you'll follow along with me, it says, "Then his brothers and his mother came. Standing outside, they sent to him, calling him, and a multitude was sitting around him. And they said to him, 'Look, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you.' But he answered them, saying, 'Who is my mother or my brothers?' And he looked around in a circle at those who sat about him, and he said, 'Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God is my brother and my sister and mother.'" So let's look at family influence. Because our text, what it does is it gives a picture of a family. You know, Jesus, he had a physical family, one that he was born into. Verse 31, his brothers and his mother came. And so here is the mother that birthed him. Here is the mother that raised him. Here are siblings that he grew up around, people that were part of his life from a very young age. And the reason we know that Jesus had real parents is because in Luke chapter 2, we read that they lost him for 3 days. And if you're a parent here, you can recall the moments you thought you lost your children, or the moments you thought you'd hope you lost your child for even just a little bit. And so they're looking for him among the relatives. They can't find him. And so what we're given is the picture of a birth family. That means that is the one that you're born into. You don't choose them. That's the one you're a part of. But then, of course, there's a family that you grew up with. For some, it may have been adoption. And adoption's a blessing because what it does is it shows a picture about who God is. And that is, God loves us so much that while we were outside, he brought us in as his children. He saved us. He brought us into his family. Others, you may have been brought up by extended family. There are people, they're brought up by their aunts, their uncles. Sometimes they're brought up by their siblings if they were very young and their siblings are older and their parents weren't part of their life. It could have been addiction, other problems. Maybe they just weren't there, unexpected death. Others that were brought up by their grandparents. I know a lot of people that their mom is actually their grandmother or their grandfather. And of course, there are those that are brought up in the foster care system. That's the one you grew up with. And then there's the family that you and we create. Verse 34, "Here are my mother and my brothers." And so he's there, they're coming. Here's your mother and your brother, they're looking for you. But Jesus points around the crowd and he says, "The ones that are around me, the ones that are with me, this is my family. This is who's by my side." And so there are relationships that we have that we're building with them. We have a covenant relationship where there you create this. This happens over a period of time. You think about it, you call each other's brothers and sisters. Sometimes you do it because you don't know the other person's name. And so it's, "Hey, sister, hey, brother." But other times it's because of how close you are, how much time you spend together, how often you're there with each other. It's the people you spend time with, the people you love, the people you care about. There was a story that made the rounds a number of years ago. And just recently, this person, they had, for the 8th year in a row, Jamal Hinton had Thanksgiving dinner with Wanda Dench. The two first met in 2016. when Dench from Messer, Arizona sent a text to Hinton inviting him over for dinner, it was meant for her grandson who had changed his phone number and she had no idea. And instead, Hinton, who was 17, got the message while he was sitting in class. And he figured that he might have made a mistake, the grandmother might have made a mistake. And so we have a picture of their conversation. It says, Thanksgiving dinner at my house. Hope to see you. Of course, it includes Amanda and Justin. I think he meant to say, who is this? And then the next slide, it says, your grandma. He says, Grandma, can I have a picture? She says, of who? The man, young kid, he's thinking, that can't be I have my grandmother. Says, you. And so she shows a picture of herself. And so then the next one is a picture of him. They don't look related. I don't know if you noticed. One's white, one's black. And so he's thinking, I'm not your grandson. And so he goes, but can I still have a plate? He says, of course you can. That's what grandmas do. They feed everyone. And so for 8 years in a row, this man has gone over to Wanda Dench's house and had Thanksgiving dinner at her home with her family because they became a family over this incident, this accident, if you will. But they became close. And so it's the family you create. But you need to understand this evening, our families, they have influence. See, in our text, Jesus is told by others who know him, they know his family, and it says, your brother and your mother, they're outside, they're waiting for you. Verse 32, look, your mother and your brothers are outside, and they're seeking you. See, in their mind, they think they get preferential treatment because that's mom. So if I'm mom, you're going to come out to me. I am waiting for you. You call your kid and you call them their name and they don't come. And then after 5 times they come and it's like, don't you know I'm calling you? Because I'm your mom. I'm your dad. You need to respond to me. But Jesus doesn't do that. He says, no, these are my mothers and my brothers. John 2:3. And when they had ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. She has a problem and she's looking to her son to fix it. Because again, they're thinking, I have treatment that's above everybody else because we're related by blood. And so if your family is unsaved, you know what tends to happen when your family's unsaved? They think they deserve better treatment over the will of God in your life. They think they can trump the will of God because we're blood. I'm your mom. You better respect me. I don't care what God says. Well, you better think carefully about those words because the will of God comes first. A lot of times it's simply because they don't understand. We're not talking about dismissing them, not talking about ignoring them, casting them aside, forgetting my parents, telling them they're going to burn if they don't get saved. But what I'm saying is, if you're not careful, what tends to happen is your family tries to dictate how you live for God. They try to tell you how you're going to serve him, what you're going to do, when you can go to service, when you can be a part of the things of God. You see, your family's not evil. There are good things that happen. There are lessons you have learned from your parents over a period of time. They teach you good things. You've risen from a young age. They cared for you. They fed you. They changed your diapers. Your mother more than likely said these words, if I brought you into this world, I can take you out. But they said that from a place of love, I'm sure. Because my mom loves me, and she told me that plenty of times. And so here's the case that I'm trying to make. Is they don't get it when it comes to the will of God. Yeah, they've taught you things. They've raised you up. But when it comes to the will of God, they simply don't understand. I think that was a Will Smith song, wasn't it? Parents just don't understand. Okay, Wayne's got me. He knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, everybody else like, who's Will Smith? Will Smith was a rapper, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, it's the same person. Anyways, Mark 3:21. When his family heard this, they went to him because they thought he was out of his mind. They thought, Jesus is crazy. What is he doing? And they're trying to pull him away from the will of God, the destiny, the calling, the purpose that he had in his life. And that's what family, when they don't understand, when they don't grasp why you do what you do, why do you evangelize? Why do you tithe? That's crazy. Why is it the things that you do? They try to pull you out. When I got saved, I've shared this story many times, but my family around Easter time, I got saved August, so it had been the following year. My mother told me, if you don't come to your aunt's for Easter, don't bother coming back home. Because she thought if she threw an ultimatum, that would change my life and my decision. I would say and grovel and say, I'm sorry, I won't do the will of God anymore. But that's not what happened. That's not what took place. See, family, they attempt to have spiritual influence over you. When you got saved, they freaked out. They were bewildered by the acts and the changes you have made in your life. They were blown. Who is? I don't know you anymore. Why are you different? Why is your life no longer the same? And so you got radical. And so now they think when it comes to the will of God, they tell you, don't bring that religion stuff to my house. Don't witness to your siblings. Don't witness to those that are by your grandma, your grandpa. Don't tell us about your Jesus. We were fine with him up to this point. We go to church. That's what they tell you. I've been to serve. I go to church every Christmas or Easter. But then they look at you and why do you have to be so radical? Can't you just love Jesus here in the house? Why is it that you go to church so often? You know, when I got saved, my family was besides themselves because they couldn't understand how is it that you've gone to church more in this 1 year of your salvation versus all the years of your life put together. But God met with me. God transformed me. He worked a miracle. You think of this holiday season. This holiday season, it's typically the time around where converts, especially new converts, they mess up. Why? Because they're surrounded by the family that wants to influence their life. They don't like you being different. And so what they do is they'll offer you things because they know your past. They know your life. This is where they want you to struggle in because of the influence of your past. It could be alcohol. You're surrounded by yourself by that. And you're thinking, what's one sip? And then you're compromised. And then it's about language, right? You've watched your language. You got saved. Now God saved your tongue. But then you get around your uncle that gets very drunk and he says absurd things. And then suddenly you're making the same mistakes. It could be discouragement. You know, yeah, we'll see how long this salvation thing works out for you. We'll see how long doing right works out for you because I know you. You'll come back. And so instead of encouraging you to live your life correctly, they're actually already putting a limit on who you are and what's going to happen in the will of God. Verse 32, look, your mother and your brothers, they're outside seeking you because here's what your family will try to do is you're on the inside serving God. They try to bring you on the outside where they're out there waiting. Sometimes this is done by manipulation. You'll hear the words, why is it that you don't love me anymore? Why don't you love your family anymore? Or the good one that always comes around, God wouldn't want you to do this. I want your family to be happy. Why would you do that to your aunt and your uncle, your brother, your sister? Why would you do that? I'm your mom. I'm your dad. Don't you love me? I don't think Jesus would want you acting this way. Sometimes they do this out of emotion. They'll start yelling at you in anger. Or if that doesn't work, they start weeping and crying the tears. I just want you to be a family again. And they'll share all these wicked things to try to pull you away from the will of God. But the truth is, you need to have influence over your family. Because it isn't that your family is evil. It's not that your family is wicked or bad. The issue is they're on the outside. And if they're unsaved, they have no idea what it means to be in the will of God. They can't grasp why is it that you live your life the way you do. They'll never understand what is taking place on the inside because they've always been on the outside. Elisha asked Elijah when he puts the mantle on him, he says, let me kiss my father and my mother goodbye. What he is saying is, let me say bye to them, but at the same time, let me get their approval about what I'm about to do. And Elijah tells him, what is it to me? Meaning that is between you and God. God's the one that's called you. God's the one who's given you a purpose. God's the one that set you apart. That's between you and him. I have nothing to do with it. And so you deal with what you need to with your family, but that's your decision. So this means your testimony matters to your family. How you live matters. How you react with them. The things, I did a lot of dumb things when I first got saved. I blame it on the radicalness of conversion. You demand, you're going to come to church. And it's like, you can't talk to your mom that way. Don't be dumb, but you learn that over time. And so I'm trying to save you guys with wisdom. What you say matters to them. Sometimes when it comes to the standards of what we live by, what I hear people often say? Oh, the church won't let me do that. The church won't let you do what? You can do whatever you want to do. But if you've decided I'm going to be in ministry, you decide I want to be in the will of God, you've limited yourself on what you want to do in the world and say, I'm not going to live by the flesh anymore. I want to live by the Spirit. It has nothing with what the church wants you to do. It's what God's telling you to do. So the stands you make matter. Because what happens over time is when you make a stand in front of your family and you continue to make stands, they realize they no longer have an influence in that area over you anymore. And so they tend to stop. They back off because they realize, he's not going to change or she's not going to, that's who they are. That's what they're doing now. So let's look secondly then on family on the inside. Because in our text, what Jesus does is he redefines what family means. Again, our thought is blood. You know the saying, blood is thicker than water. And you'll have the family tell you that. Well, blood, it's thicker than water. Verse 35, but he looked around in the circle and said, whoever does the will of God is my brother and my sister and my mother. What are you saying? His family is tied up to whoever does the will of God. That's my family. You're not cutting off your family. That's not what I'm saying. You're not going to call your mom right now after service. You get up from the altar. Mom, you're dead to me. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you've made a decision. You know what? My family is bigger now. It's different, meaning you have no influence like that anymore. You're not going to change how I live for God. You're not going to influence my decisions in the will of God. Because you're saying what my family is now, my family is on the inside. Because he points to those inside the circle. Verse 34, here are my mother and my brothers. Okay, his family, they came to convince him that he's crazy. They came to convince him he's out of his mind. They came to tell him, you're mad, you're creating enemies. If you actually read the text, it says, Jesus had not eaten dinner, something to that effect, and then his family came. And so what they're saying, you missed family mealtime. That's us time. What are you doing? You're mad. What he's saying is that's the family on the outside. And they say, well, you never spend time with us. God and church always come first. What about us? But being on the inside, you understand, I want my life to be surrounded by those who do the will of God for their life. I love my family. My family, they're not saved. They're not born again. And I love them to death. But the greatest joy that I have is the family that I created on the inside. People who are on the same page. People who are doing the same thing. People who have vision of what we can do, of what can happen in our life. It's family on the outside. It's like, I love you, but you're crazy. We've made a stand. I hope they never watch this video, but a number of years ago when we were in Denver, my wife and I, we made a stand and said, you're not going to bring alcohol into my house. You're going to come for Christmas. That's fine. We're going to love you. We care. We're going to have a good time. But we can have a good time without drinking. And we thought they passed the test until my in-laws, George and Jessica, they were visiting for New Year's. They went inside that bedroom. They were reorganizing and cleaning, and they found a Bud Light can underneath the dresser. My parents, like little kids, were hiding alcohol in my house. First, my father-in-law thought maybe I was being too stressed out that I needed to take the edge off. I said, that wasn't me. But I said, you know what, that's crazy. It's that feel like little kids. I got to reprimand them, put them in timeout. What were you thinking? Well, that's family on the outside. Again, they don't understand. Why is it that you do what you do? Why do you live your life a certain way? But see, relationships change. Everything changed when you got saved. And it's difficult for your family to understand. They can't grasp all the radicalness, the decisions you've made, the choices. You were crazy before, you're in your right mind now, but to them, that's not normal. What happened to the person who lived their life crazy, but now you're making decisions that are best for your life, and they're blown away. They're upset. They're angry. But you learn from people on the inside. You think of your marriage. You learn marriage advice. The things that I've learned in my life from my marriage, in raising my children, in money, in ministry. You know where I learned that from? I learned that from the family on the inside. I learned how to be a father to my son and to my daughter, how to raise them, how to care for their needs. I learned how to treat my wife differently than the way that I saw my dad. And they love each other. They're still married. But there was something different that I saw in the will of God that said, that's the kind of marriage that I want. That's the kind of relationship I want to have with my family, my kids. I want things to be different because you learn from them. The beginning of my salvation and my marriage, my mom was upset because her little mijito is growing up. And so I decided I was going to get my own big boy pants account. I was going to buy my own bank account because I'm a grown man now. I was going to get my own cell phone bill and pay for it. We're going to do things, our own insurance. And my mom had never experienced that because all of my sisters were on her thing, her insurance, her phone bill. She had access to their accounts and to their money. And so when we left to Denver, why are you doing that? Why are you leaving me? Like, I'm not leaving you, Mom. I'm still your son, but I've got the will of God for my life now. I'm not saying this to discourage you, but my mom always tells me, yeah, my friends at work, they always think you're made up. When I tell them I have a son, but it's because I'm never there. I'm always here in Orlando or in Denver. And so they never really experienced me at Outgoing. It's like, man, is your son real? I feel like you're making it up. Let me see a picture. And they see me like, oh no, that looks exactly like you. My parents will be here in a couple of weeks, so you'll see I look like my mom. But they don't understand things. And so the response to them is different. John 2:4, Jesus said to her, woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. Imagine every time I read that text, imagine talking to your mom like that. Woman, my time has not yet come. And so I was like, that can't be what it means. What does it mean? Imagine that if you can do it. Well, Jesus did it. No, okay. So I found out Jesus didn't do it. What he's saying is it's not a sign of disrespect. He's not reaching out to her in disrespect. You know what he's saying at that moment? He's saying, you're coming to me as the miracle worker now. You're not coming to me as your son. So that means the relationship has changed. Now I'm the Savior. Now I'm coming to fill my role as the Messiah. Things are different. It's no longer you're not coming to me as a mother helping a son. It's different. The relationship is different because now what he's going to do, that's a sign of public ministry. It's not the same anymore. The relationship you and I have, it's going to be different because my purpose is for the people. My life is for others. You'll love your family. You'll care for them. You'll help them. But they can't have influence over your life anymore when it comes to the will of God because it's shifted. It's different. Because this shows us how important your family is on the inside. Kingdom relationships, they're crucial to your survival because they're an example. They help you. There are people that you can reach out to in your times of trouble. They're an example of a life that you want to live. There's a benefit because they take you in. My father-in-law and Jessica, they, in their time of being saved, they brought in young people into their home, people that were kicked out of their family, and they let them stay in their house because that's what a heart of a person does. It says, you're part of the family now. The family of God, it's different. We're going to bring you in. We love you. John 19:26. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing by, he said to his mother, woman, behold your son. Then he said to his disciple, behold your mother. And from that hour, the disciple took her to his own home. You know, it's amazing. Jesus had other siblings, but he gave the responsibility to his disciple. What that is doing, it's emphasizing the importance of kingdom relationships. She had other sons, but she left him in the hands of John. Said, as long as she's alive, she's in your house. You're going to take care of her. You're going to help her. See, family is based on who does his will. You're always going to have your real family. They're always going to be there for you. But Jesus is saying it's important to surround yourself with those who are doing what I've told them to do. Those who belong with you. You know, sometimes my wife and I, we don't actually fight. We bicker, but not in being angry, bicker voice and getting mad, yelling. But I'll always laugh because Francis will say, don't yell in front of your kids. And he's talking about him. He's like, don't yell and don't fight in front of the kids. But he's saying is we're family now. Right? We're close. We have a relationship. Saying it's different. Janelle Rice, she filmed the moment that her son Landon ripped off the wrapping paper. And in that, he found a certificate telling him that he was being adopted by his stepdad. And he burst into tears. We have the video of that. This was a number of Christmases ago.